also was a need to talk about what type of organizing do we need today. And so I was very much advocating the lines of Eugene Debs for a mass socialist party that has working class independence, and clearly not seeking to reform the capitalist system, even though reforms are very important to win along the way, but replace capitalism with socialism.
Hello, my name is Stanley Heller. You're watching The Struggle Video News.
We're standing here today because we are tired of being asked to separate what has never been separate. We are told that war happens over there and policing happens over here. But the truth is, violence is a system, and that system knows no borders. The same government that finds billions of dollars for bombs, for military expansion, and for war-like places in Iran is the same government that tells us there is not enough funding for mental health care, not enough funding for housing, not enough funding for the very things that keep people alive. And right here in Hartford, we are living the consequences of that lie. Because when people in mental health crisis encounter the police instead of care, that is not an accident, that is a policy choice. When men like Everard Walker and Stevie Jones are killed, that is not just one bad moment. That is a result of a system that has been trained to respond to human pain with force instead of compassion. And let's be very clear, firing one police officer is not enough. Firing one police officer is not justice. We have one more to go. And even beyond that, we are still left with the deeper question. Why does this have to happen at all? Why is it that in this country, when people are in the most vulnerable moments, they are met with weapons instead of support? Why do we have to march? Why do we have to organize? Why do we have to protest and beg to be treated like human beings? Why do we have to fight for transparency from the very institutions that are funded by our own tax dollars? Because let's talk about these tax dollars. We are expected, without fail, to pay into a system. We are told that there will be consequences if we don't. And yet, when it comes time for those resources to come back to us, mental health, housing, community care, suddenly the money is gone. But it's not gone. That money is being redirected. Redirected into war. Redirected into policing systems that escalate instead of de-escalate. Redirected into things like over $1 million to rebuild a gun range for police. We know they know how to shoot. They're shooting us dead. At a time when we are burying people. At a time when families are grieving. And at a time when communities are asking, no, we are demanding something different. And let me say this plainly. They don't need no more training on how to shoot. We are seeing the results of that already. What we need is investment in life.
So you mentioned some police killings. Was it at one time? Was it two separate incidents? What happened?
So I will say that you may want to reach out to some of the local news authorities to get more in-depth information. But Stevie Jones, who the officer for him has been released from duty, was in the middle of a mental health crisis, and instead of social workers showing to the scene, Hartford police officers showed up. In the body cam footage, it was shown that while he was carrying a knife, he was calm, and the other officers had him calm, and that he began to move, and the other officers did say there was no need for guns, and one officer shot out about 9 rounds of bullets. I want to say over 9 rounds of bullets into him. Everard Walker was having a mental break after the death of one of his children. He was calling 211 to get help. And in the middle of that mental break, Hartford police showed up, and he received over 9 bullets. So those are the two separate incidents, and they were about 10 days apart. So 2 men, 10 days apart.
Now, when was this?
This was about, at this point, we're looking at about a month or so ago, and forgive me, some of that slipped my mind after this protest. So we have been looking to get justice for the families. Other activists, other organizations who have much more heavyweight than I do, have been working really hard with the families and standing with the families.
I just want to say a few things about the MAGA's April 1st address about Iran. Trump said, "I terminated Barack Hussein Obama's Iran nuclear deal, a disaster. Obama gave them $1.7 billion in cash." Journalist Spencer Ackerman on Democracy Now! Noted that this money was actually Iranian money that the U.S. had frozen since the 1970s. More importantly, he explained that President Trump had given Iran $13 to $14 billion. That's because Trump has been allowing Iran to sell its oil on the world market for 30 days. And since the war has driven up oil prices, Iran reaps a bonanza when it sells oil. Ackerman estimates that this bonanza is $13 to $14 billion that goes into the coffers of the Iranian regime. Think about it. If you or I gave the Iranian government $1,000, we'd probably get arrested. But when the president gives them billions, his minions regard it as genius. Another thing he said was, in 1 year, we've taken a dead and crippled country. I hate to say that, but we were a dead and crippled country after the last administration and made it the hottest country anywhere in the world, by far, with no inflation. Record-setting investments coming into the United States, over $18 trillion, and the highest stock market ever, and on and on. No inflation? No inflation? Gas prices aren't going up. The cost of living isn't rising due to the war. The Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development had forecast all items inflation at 2.8%. And now, after the war has started, 4.2% for this year. But we have to agree that the U.S. is likely the hottest country. Just look at this weather map for March, with heat records being tied and broken all across the U.S. In the last days of winter, a desert town in Arizona hit 110 degrees, breaking the record for a March high temperature in all of recorded history in the United States. Trump's work during his first term and last year to erase all kinds of government control on greenhouse gases have absolutely made the U.S. hot. Lebanon. Trump didn't even mention the Israeli-U.S. war against Lebanon in his speech. Israel has so far conquered 1/10 of the entire country, up to the Litani River. For a very rough comparison, 1/10 of the United States would be about the size of 2 Californias. Israel's excuse for the war is that Hezbollah fired several missiles against Israel at the start of March, despite their ceasefire agreement. Missiles indeed had been fired, not mentioned by the Israeli Zionist regime, and the U.S. corporate media, is that Israel violated that ceasefire routinely, almost from the first day it was signed. Back in 2024, Israel has bombed and killed over 300 people, including 100 civilians, during a ceasefire agreement that Israel had signed. ULA, Unidad Latina and Accion, is doing work to help free an immigrant named Stalin. Yes, that is his name. He's been in prison after being taken by ICE over a year ago. Scan this QR code for more information. We present in a moment more of the interview that I did last week with Tom Alter, the professor who was fired at Texas State University because of his remarks at a socialist conference. But first, we want to mention that Alter is on a speaking tour, and he'll be speaking in Connecticut at Western Connecticut State University on Monday, April 6th at Whitehall, room 127 at 5 o'clock in the evening. The next day, he'll be at Central Connecticut State University at Founders Hall at noon. Go to the website defendtomalter.org to see information about all the upcoming events. Now to the interview.
Just anybody that saw my talk or read the transcript online, which the Texas State University student newspaper, the University Star, published a transcript of my talk. And anyone that's actually read the transcript or viewed my talk online has come to almost the near unanimous conclusion, I guess, except for the Texas State University president, that was not calling for overthrowing the U.S. government in any way whatsoever.
All right, let me talk about the legalities a little bit. So I assume Texas State University is a public college, so
Correct.
it's a government-run institution. It's not like a private business that can fire people for any reason. And
Exactly.
You're nodding your head there. So now I'm no lawyer, but isn't it the case that any kind of speech is legal unless, as Supreme Court Justice Brennan wrote years ago, the speech is, quote, inciting or producing imminent lawless action and is likely to incite or produce such action, unquote. Isn't that a
Yes.
fair summary of kind of current legal, at least now, before Trump takes care of it?
Yeah, we're in tumultuous times for sure, but past, generations of legal precedent and First Amendment rights is that there's a clear definition of inciting violence, as you were just reading it. And what that basically means is you have to be like in front of a crowd in person, with that crowd is capable of actually carrying out violence, and you're encouraging them to carry out that violence right then and there. So like say you're in front of a government building, you're in front of a angry crowd that has tools that are capable of inflicting destruction, and you encourage them and say, let's tear down that building right now. That's the clear legal definition of inciting violence. I was at home from my home office where I'm speaking to you right now, online on a Sunday morning, giving a historical overview of working class based organizing. So I think that most people would see that that does not fit the legal definition of inciting violence.
Well, did your remarks produce some kind of imminent lawless action? Was there a riot after you spoke?
No, no, there was not a riot after I spoke. Actually, what happened is I took a COVID test, and turns out I had COVID. That's why I wasn't feeling well, and so that's why it was one of the reasons I was giving my talk from here at my home office, and so yeah, I was powering through COVID during my talk. So no riot.
So for some, there was a physically present conference for some of the people.
For some of the people chose to get together and to watch it in a group. I was hoping to watch it with my local branch of Socialist Horizon. It's a group that I'm a member of, and we were hoping to get together and kind of participate in the conference together. But I stayed home because I wasn't feeling well. So
So
yeah, so
when
no,
was
so no
when
violence.
right? When was that conference?
That conference was September 6th and 7th. The September, a Saturday and a Sunday on 6th and the 7th. And then I was fired on the 10th. So I gave that talk on a Sunday morning, not exactly prime time for the
Wow.
conference talk. I mean, it was a well, there was good participation in the conference, but understandably so, I didn't have like a prime time slot Sunday morning. It was one of the less participation compared to the participation we had it during the afternoon sessions on Saturday, and then later
So
that Sunday afternoon.
what was your talk about?
It was called Revolution. I'm trying to remember, building revolutionary socialist organizing today. Um, and so I was advocating for the need for working class people to create our own socialist party independent of the Democrats and Republicans that, and what I mean by revolutionary socialism is that you openly declare yourself socialist and see the need to replace the capitalist system with a socialist system. That's through a mass democratic movement. And so it's calling for like, I'm very much a Debsian socialist, a Eugene Debs guy, where I believe, again, like an independent working class political action. So it's kind of like the debate that's been going on. I mean, there's a lot of people that are upset about the world today coming to anti-capitalist conclusions. So what we're seeing now, it's more of a crisis of organization. Like there's many people that are upset about the world, whether it's the genocide in Palestine or the current war with Iran, current economic crisis at home. And so it was a need to talk about what type of organizing do we need today. And so I was very much advocating the lines of Eugene Debs for a mass socialist party that has working class independence and clearly not seeking to reform the capitalist system, even though reforms are very important to win along the way, but replace capitalism with socialism.
And I just saw a little section of it, and you were also criticizing some anarchist ideas.
Yes, that was I was praising the civil disobedience of anarchists, saying that that's what we need sometimes need more of. In particular, the anarchist actions of putting their bodies and lives and careers on the line with protesting environmental destruction, such as the Dakota Access Pipeline protest, and also the protest against Cop City. So while I was praising their civil disobedience, which civil disobedience is a long and cherished history in the United States, I was critiquing their opposition to creation of a political party, which is just being as a Marxist and a Debsian for the creation of a political party, and that's we need that type of organization. So I posed the question, um, without organization, how does one expect to overthrow the most bloodthirsty, profit-driven, mad organization in the history of the world, that of the U.S. government? This is in reference to anarchists, their theoretical call for smashing the state. So I was just posing that question, how do you expect to do that without organization when the United States government has proven itself to be highly organized and very brutal in its repressive measures?
I think that, well, personally speaking, maybe there was a bit of hyperbole. I mean, there's
Yes.
Hitler and there's
Yes.
Stalin,
Yes. I
but
will I will admit that. I own that remark, but it was a rhetorical question. And it's really, I mean, it follows in this, I'm not alone. I mean, you have Martin Luther King in his 1967 Beyond Vietnam speech when he called the United States government the greatest purveyors of violence in the world. I had a few more adjectives in mine, but my critique is hardly original or alone.
okay. So are you in court about this firing? And if so, what's the latest?
Yes, the Texas American Association of University Professors is one of my unions, has provided me with a lawyer. We have filed a lawsuit and we're seeking to come to some form of justice. It's a long process. Initially, a judge ordered that I be reinstated, and this is when Texas State then had what they considered their version of a due process hearing. But that hearing was basically between myself, my lawyer, the university president, the provost, and their lawyer. So it's basically having a hearing where the judge and the prosecutor are one and the same. And so, as expected, the outcome is I was fired again. And so now we have an ongoing lawsuit, and we clearly have the Constitution on our side, and we feel we're eager to have our day in court.
So you actually did talk with them at that hearing. How long was that hearing?
Whew, good question. I'd say it was about an hour. And
Uh-huh.
so, I mean, I explained what I, in references to my talk, what I meant. I explained to him. I mean, it's in my scholarship as well, um, because I cover the Texas Socialist Party during the early 1900s, where they referred to themselves as revolutionary socialists. And what their versions of what their actions were is they ran candidates for office and supported strike actions of working class people.
So how did they explain to you that that one, maybe 2 minute section made you a danger to the students on the campus?
Good question. Um, they said that my rhetoric was inflammatory and during these charged political times. But the main inflammatoriness came from their rhetoric. I mean, charging me with inciting violence and criminal activity. That caused more of a ruckus on the campus than anything that I said because there were protests on campus for 5 school days straight after my firing, of students protesting my firing.
Uh-huh.
Um, it's really it's really kind of baffling reading their justifications for things. They said I was encouraging students to join a revolutionary socialist party, and they put it all in capitals, meaning like as if there is such an organization called the Revolutionary Socialist Party. Maybe there is such an organization, very small out there somewhere. I have no idea. I haven't been made aware of such an organization called the Revolutionary Socialist Party. And they said I was using my position as a professor to recruit, basically, in their view, gullible students into this Revolutionary Socialist Party, even though there's no evidence of that whatsoever. I mean, there's never been a complaint against me issued by a student. I actually have some students got confused and even thought I was a Republican. So it
And
was,
they got all this out of those that 2 minutes of the excerpt from that day at the Socialist Conference.
well, yeah, they used my entirety of my conference talk. They
Oh,
also
so
made a
they did see
reference.
it. Okay.
Yeah, yeah. So they made also a reference because in my talk I said our tasks are clear. They're laid out in the Communist Manifesto. And so they use that. But what does the Communist Manifesto actually say? I mean, I was speaking to a particular audience that would be familiar with the Communist Manifesto. And what Marx and Engels were calling for in 1848, they called for working with the Chartist in England and the agrarianist in the United States. Now, the Chartist was a movement in England calling for universal male suffrage, firstly, for all men to have the right to vote. And the agrarianist, it's a term that's not used any longer. The agrarianists in the United States were those looking for land reform and also increase the vote and also anti-slavery. So that's what I was saying, and that's and what they're calling for is to work to for socialists to connect with the struggles of the working class. And so that's what I was calling for. And I gave examples. I called for defending transgender people, for opposing ICE, and for supporting the hotel workers that were then on strike in Houston against Hilton. So that's what I called for explicitly. And those are all popular things. I mean, that you can see people are supporting the struggle for trans liberation. None of these things are contested, but they're popular things, supporting trans liberation. You see the widespread protest against ICE, and also the hotel workers in Houston won their strike. And the Houston Chronicle even had one of their co-persons of the year, an immigrant woman hotel worker that was out on strike. So it wasn't exactly out there
So
entirely with
on
things
the
I was calling
basis
for.
of these general calls to organize, they said you were organizing a cell of this imaginary party
Yes. Yeah.
on campus. On campus.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So this is a free speech fight, in particular, the right to talk about radical change and socialism. So are labor unions supporting you beyond the ones that you belong to?
Yes, this has been it's been really great. Just the amount of the kind of the solidarity forever and the old slogan of an injury to one is an injury to all. On besides my unions, the Texas State Employees Union and the AAUP, when I've been on the West Coast, the 10 days in California, a number of faculty unions have supported me. The United Teachers of LA, the Chicago Teachers Union, the Steelworkers Union, which represents faculty at University of Pittsburgh, different Ask Me locals around the country. So it has drawn the broad support of labor because this is a labor issue. Besides my termination, which is my employment, it's also during these times we see the assaults that are happening on democratic rights. And this is also besides bread and butter issues, which are very important. It's also important that the labor movement is standing up and fighting for democratic rights for everybody. And so it's really been a kind of call to arms and a unifying moment within the left. And
That's our program for today. See you next week at this time. I'm Stanley Heller for the Struggle Video News.